The latest data for the 911 Turbo shows that depreciation rates are extremely low. While most performance cars lose value fast, the Turbo has quietly become one of the most stable, value-retaining vehicles on the market. Depreciation rates could even be lower than for a GT3. If you're a value-conscious buyer, you cannot miss this market update. I will show you which generation has the lowest depreciation rate and therefore might be the best buy, and how the rates compare to the rest of the 911s and the rest of the market. Now, for long-term subscribers, it might not be a surprise to hear that the 911 Turbo is doing well. We saw prices surge during the pandemic, just as they did in the rest of the market. In the beginning of 22, they topped, and value started to decline with above average rates. Again, similar to the rest of the market. In September 23 though, I shared with you that the depreciation rates were starting to decrease for most turbo generations and that it could be a good moment to buy. In June 24, we saw that this bottoming pattern was confirmed. Now we can see that the low depreciation rate still applies. There are of course some differences between the generations. We just had a look at the trend for the 991.1 Turbo S. Let's have a look at the other ones. Starting with the 992s, we can see that they in fact depreciated quickly after the market top. In 2023 though, the price trend changed and prices fell less quickly. Since then, prices have been drifting lower, but at a low, stable rate. S's lost 3.6% and base models 4.5%. These rates amount to $9.3 and $10.5 thousand respectively. Good results for such a new car. Note that this is an average rate. The oldest cars lost slightly less and the newest ones slightly more. It also turns out that this depreciation rate is mainly caused by an increase in mileage. The average mileage increased by 1,630 miles. If we take away this increase, meaning that we look at the price change for cars with the same miles, we can see that there's hardly any depreciation. The price for each mileage didn't change during last year. Now, depreciation is only part of the cost of ownership, and having a car that has a low depreciation rate is certainly attractive to value-conscious buyers. Another way to keep the cost of ownership low is by protecting your front bumper. One of the most horrific and expensive sounds in the automotive world is the sound of your bumper scraping over the tarmac. It can happen to anyone. Speed bumps, potholes, and steep inclines are everywhere these days. To protect your car from these dangers, you can install the latest in skid plate technology from Exclusive Motorworks. This isn't just any skid plate. The Automod skid plates from Exclusive Motorworks are the thinnest on the market and require no drilling, screws, or rivets to attach. Each skid plate is designed by 3D laser scanning individual vehicle models to ensure that every skid plate is custom fitted. The skid plate kit comes with pre-applied, double-sided 3M VHB tape, making the installation a piece of cake. No drilling or screwing required. You can order a skid plate for your car at exclusivemotorworks.com. Let's get back to the price trends. Starting with the 991.2, we can see that prices have been drifting down slowly since mid-23. After correcting in the second half of 22. Depreciation has been stable. Base models are down by 2.7% and S models by 3.7%. Out of these two changes, only the one of the S market is confirmed. Supply is by the way plummeting in these segments, so it might be more difficult to find the spec you want. Switching things to the 991.1s, we can see much of the same. A slow and stable decline since mid-23. The decline though is even smaller than in the .2 market. Last year the base models lost 2.4% and the S's 1.3%. None of the changes are statistically confirmed, so the change can be the result of chance. But there's something else interesting going on. If we look at the development of the share of cars that didn't sell within 3 months, we can see that it has been declining, especially for the S model. In other words, cars have been selling slightly quicker. Sellers can of course decrease prices on unsold cars to sell them quicker, but the opposite happened in the S market. If we look at the price change for unsold cars, we can see that the S model, on average, increased in price and that base models were discounted by 1% only. This signals that sellers are very confident that they will shift the cars and even see prices potentially going up in the future. This matches with the low depreciation rates that we saw. Yet, we need to keep in mind that inventory data is highly influenced by seasonal patterns and that it gets more volatile as supply decreases. Nevertheless, the last two data points are rather extraordinary. Let's continue with the 997. If we look at the .2 generation, we need to distinguish between the manuals and the automatic cars. .2 manuals are relatively rare, and price is completely different compared to their automatic counterparts. Prices though have been stable and are up by 1.5%. But as you can see from the wide confidence interval, the uncertainty is high. There are only between 1 and 7 cars for sale at a given time, and sometimes all of them are still for sale in the next period. The change is then also not confirmed. Zooming into the automatic cars, we can see that prices are a bit lower, but that trends are as strong as in the manual market. Base models are up by 3.1% during last year, and S's are up by 3.8%. Again, none of these changes are confirmed. It's clear though that prices didn't decrease. Supply though is decreasing rapidly, making these cars increasingly rare. Continuing with the 997.1, we can see again a big difference between the manual and automatics. The automatics are up by 0.9%, a price change that isn't confirmed. But as you can see, prices have been stable basically since 2022. This doesn't apply to many cars. The price uncertainty in the manual market is extremely high, as supply is relatively low and the average miles fluctuate between 25 and 50,000 miles. The last data point seems then also a bit unreliable. I would use the change in the automatic market as a proxy. Finally, we have the 996s. Over here you can see the trends for the base model. The S market is quite small, and personally I would use the depreciation rate of the base market as a proxy. The base market has been rock stable since 2022. It has been one of the lowest depreciating models on the channel for a long time. Last year they lost 0.6%. This drop is not confirmed of course, meaning that it's fair to assume that prices were stable. We saw a lot of numbers now, so let's put everything together. Over here we have the yearly depreciation rates that we just saw and the ones of the year before. The result is quite amazing to say the least. 992s are of course losing the most, but a rate of 4% is extremely low for this type of car. It's also extremely stable, as it is the same as between March 23 and March 24. 991.2s and 991.1s started to bottom even more and are losing between 3 and 2%. 997s and 996s seem to be completely bottomed out and might even be going up. Now intuitively these are all extremely low rates, but also the data supports this. It's basically depreciating as slowly as a GT3. Comparing the turbos to the GT3s and Carreras, we can see that the 992s are on the same level as the GT3, that 996s lost less and 991s lost basically the same. The 997 GT3 rate comes with an immense uncertainty, so I wouldn't put too much emphasis on it. The Carrera lost overall slightly more than the turbos. This is perhaps to be expected, but the comparison to the GT3 is a bit of a surprise. Historically, I think that GT3s held better than turbos. If you want more details on the Carrera and GT3 numbers, have a look at the full market update on my channel. But the Carrera, GT3 and turbo market are all depreciating at relatively low rates, and this becomes evident when we compare the rates to the rest of the market. Over here we have the US year-over-year price changes for almost all cars that feature on my channel. On the horizontal axis we have the price change compared to last year in percentages, and on the vertical axis we have the number of cars to which this change applies. The average decrease during last year was 4%, and most cars lost between 8 and 1%. This means that all turbos lost the same or less than the average. Even the relatively new 992.1 depreciates at the same rate as the average, while cars this age typically fall on the left hand side of the average. 996s and 997s even fall in the top 25% of cars that depreciate the least. Let's wrap up. We saw that all turbo generations continue to depreciate at relatively low rates, making them excellent purchases for value-conscious buyers. The 996s and 997s are the smartest choices from a value perspective. Prices have been flat or even went up slightly. Moreover, prices have behaved like this for a few years, giving confidence in the stability. The 991.1 is a good middle way if you prefer a slightly more modern car but like to make a value-conscious purchase. Naturally, the 991.2 and 992.1s have the highest depreciation rates, making them the worst choice compared to other turbo models. Yet, compared to the rest of the market, these cars are still depreciating at extremely low rates. Now, all the depreciation rates that we looked at are descriptive. They tell us what happened, not what might happen in the long-term future. They have some predictive power when it comes to forecasting the short-term prices, but as you can imagine, they cannot predict long-term price changes. Major sudden economic events, for example, can completely offset any price trajectory the cars are on. And with that, we arrived at the end of the video. Now, if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car prices, but would like to see a video for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you find data-driven market analysis for a large variety of cars. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks for a fresh market update.